You're all right back there? Yeah, all right. Well, it is. It's good afternoon, and we're here in Natimuck today, a community that has been so badly hit by the fires that tore through this community on Friday afternoon. But it's a strong and proud community, and I'll come back to that point in just a moment. I'd like to, in acknowledging the Natimuck community, the captain of the CFA, David Sudholtz, and everyone who's here and has been sharing us with our stories. Thank you for being here today. I'd also like to acknowledge my ministerial and parliamentary colleagues, Minister Vicki Ward and local Upper House member Jacinta. I'm also joined by the Emergency Management Commissioner Tim Wiebusch and Chief Fire Officer Jason Heffernan, and Tim and Jason will shortly provide more detail on the ongoing fire emergency situation here in Victoria. But I did want to start with the Natimuck community. When the fires started here on Friday afternoon, it was in the midst of a catastrophic day. The heat was fierce and the winds were incredibly strong. And the fire took off in the grasslands, and the consequence of that fire is that we have seen the fire come through the Natimuck community, but also across the broader district as well that has been hit. That's because there was many thousands, more than 8,000 hectares of land have been burnt out as a result of this fire. The fact that it wasn't more was because of the incredible work of the not just the Natimuck CFA, but the brigades from across the district. And I want to thank everyone who left some of their own communities who were at risk on this catastrophic day to come and support the Natimuck district when they were under threat. Because of that effort, they managed to pull up the fire and stopped it before it could have spread much, much further. But it did a lot of damage. The fire has ravaged many parts of this community, and the current estimate is there's something like 30 homes have been lost and many more structures have been impacted. And you know, it's just so heartbreaking to listen to the members of the community who are here today who have lost their own homes. And I particularly want to acknowledge those CFA members and volunteers. They weren't here to protect their own home because they were out protecting others, and that's incredibly tough. But it also is a demonstration of the determination and the commitment to community service that CFA members demonstrate every single day. And that is why we are here on the ground in Natimuck today, to listen to the experiences of the Natimuck and district community, to also learn and understand about what support is going to be needed on the very long recovery journey ahead. I mentioned 30 homes before. This is a small community, a strong community, but that 30 homes represents a significant proportion of the population here in Natimuck. But the community is already talking about how it's working together, how it's going to rebuild, how it's supporting one another. And I want to be very clear that the government will stand in support of this community and indeed all fire affected communities across the state. Part of the purpose of being here today is, as I said, to listen about what more is going to be needed on the journey ahead. I'll talk in a moment about some of the details of what we're announcing today, but before I do go to that, I do want to acknowledge that there has been further, obviously, structural losses across the state. We're above 350 structural losses at the fires right across the state, and we again expect that number to grow as the impact assessments are undertaken. But I want to also pause for a moment and acknowledge the loss of life at the Longwood fire. A member of that local community who was part of that local community and has lost their life as a result of the fires, that huge and ongoing fire around Longwood. And my thoughts and condolences are with that person's family, their loved ones, the broader community too. And indeed, as we were talking yesterday, everyone across the emergency services and fire affected communities felt that loss when we heard the news yesterday afternoon that someone had been lost to the fires. It's a devastating impact, and it's a devastating reminder of the tragedy that fire can bring to any community, to any household, to any doorstep, particularly on those difficult, catastrophic and extreme weather days. So in terms of, though, the ongoing fires, fire continues today in many parts of the state, and the Commissioner and the Chief Fire Officer will go through some of the details of the fires that are continuing in the landscape today, most notably the fires in East Gippsland around Dargo, at Walwa, in Longwood, the fire that continues to be large around the Longwood fire, and also in the Otways as well. So it's another reminder for all Victorians that it's another difficult day for our emergency services. It's another difficult day for those communities that are continuing to be under fire threat. It's a reminder that we do need to continue to follow the advice of our emergency services. If you are told to leave, do so. Members of the community here follow that advice, and it saved lives on Friday, and I want Victorians to continue that effort, because it is just so important to protect life and also to support the work of the emergency services as well. But as I said, it does continue to be a difficult day today, and I also want Victorians to monitor conditions because they can continue to change. In the northern parts of the state particularly, the weather will remain warm. And we want to do everything we can to support our emergency services by monitoring local conditions and taking advice. And on that point about taking advice, can I reiterate the point that for those communities where the fire immediacy of the fire emergency may have passed, there are still many parts of these communities that it is not safe to return into, and the crews are working around the clock to restore road access, particularly to restore important telecommunications and power access. But please follow the advice, and if you were told it's not safe to return, please follow that advice. And under the State of Disaster Declaration, Victoria Police have those powers to deal with people who shouldn't be in those local areas. My message too, though, to people in the local community, particularly around Longwood, who I know are wanting to have access for being able to particularly access livestock, work is being coordinated through Agricultural Victoria to, where possible, to provide support. So I'd encourage those in those local areas to contact local officials who are concerned about local livestock, and it goes to the importance of that announcement yesterday around providing fodder through $10 million in fodder support to be able to feed livestock. And so if I could just go to some further announcements today around how we're providing ongoing support to local communities. Yesterday with the Prime Minister, we made announcements around personal hardship payments, and on the personal hardship payments, we've had more than 430 payments already being made, and they continue to be available. And please do contact the Relief Centre, contact the Vic Emergency Hotline for you to be able to access that immediate support. The package of support that we announced yesterday is responding to that immediate need, and today's announcements follow in that focus as well, from listening to local communities and understanding what immediate need is required. It's why today we're activating the emergency assistance payments. These are payments of up to $52,250 for people to re-establish their principal place of residence, and it's particularly focused on people who do not have the insurance that they needed to have. So it is about recognising that there are going to be many who have financial difficulty, and these emergency assistance grants are available for those eligible Victorians, and the Minister will go into further detail. We announced some support yesterday for mental health support, and we're extending that today by bringing forward an existing program that we had operating through our drought support, and are extending the eligibility of that for affected communities in fire areas. And this is there are a range of mental health programs run through rural financial counselling, and also the Look Over the Farm Gate program. These programs are going to be extended to fire-affected communities, and it's in recognition that alongside the physical rebuilding, there's a lot of trauma, a lot of impact that we also need to support people individually with the trauma that has been experienced, but also families and communities as well. There is, when I said there's a long rebuilding journey ahead, that includes taking care of people who've experienced a terrible fire and the ongoing impacts. Also too, finally, I want to thank the enormous response from across Victoria and indeed from across the nation, where people who aren't in the fire-affected community have been watching so very closely and have been so deeply concerned about what's going on here in communities like Nadimak and across the state. And I know that Victorians are wanting to give and provide support and be generous. At toughest times like this, it does bring out the very, very best of everyone, and to support Victorians and indeed Australians who are wanting to show their support for fire-affected communities, we are starting and opening the Victorian bushfire appeal. Donations will be able to start to being made tomorrow online, and I do encourage people who are looking at a way of providing support. The best way to provide that support is through this appeal. Every dollar raised through this appeal will go back into providing support for fire-affected communities, and how that funding is allocated will be guided by the advice we get from fire-affected communities. So it will absolutely, every dollar will go to where it is needed, and it is a way that we can all provide our personal way of showing support, and also telling those fire-affected communities that we might not, for many people, not I can be here on the ground. Many want to be here. This is the way that you can show that you're with people in spirit, in support, and showing these communities that you love and care for them, and that they are wanting to get that support out on the ground. There is going to be a long recovery journey ahead for communities like Natimak, and my government will be there for that recovery and rebuilding program that's ahead. But also, as we talk about recovery and rebuilding ahead, we also have to be mindful of the immediate fire risk that is still present in the landscape across parts of regional Victoria, and ask Victorians to continue to follow that advice and the advice of the emergency services. And on that point, I'll ask the Emergency Management Commissioner to provide the update.
Thank you, Premier. Good afternoon, everybody. First of all, I'd just like to acknowledge the tragic death that we've seen in the last 24 hours in the Longwood fire footprint at Gobor. Our thoughts are obviously very much with the family and friends of that gentleman, obviously the wider community there, but also the many communities across our state where we are seeing these impacts from these devastating fires. Fortunately today, the conditions are continuing to be more favourable than they have been in more recent days, but that doesn't mean that the risk is over as of yet. We still have 3 emergency warnings in the landscape, along with 19 watch and act warnings, and so for communities where they have warnings in place, please continue to visit the Vic Emergency website or check your Vic Emergency app to make sure that you're getting the latest information and understanding what those fires are doing. Whilst the conditions are easing in some parts of the state, even the slightest of winds are still causing those fires to move around. We still have 12 major fires across the state of Victoria, and that now includes the 2 fires in the Otways, being the Kennedy Creek and the Carlisle River. The Longwood fire, as we've continued to see, the largest fire footprint in our state. We still have the Walwa Mount Lawson fire as well. Ravenswood and Harcourt fire is still getting very close now to containment. We've still got the fire of Wannangatta in the Gippsland valleys as well, along with the 2 fires at Wiebusch, and then we've got a complex of fires, so multiple smaller fires that we've brought together under the name of the Snowy Complex. And that does include a range of fires that are in and around the Wiebusch area, and even a fire down towards Malakuta. So with those 12 fires that are still in our landscape, we still need communities to be heeding our warnings. I guess in good news though, we now have 3 further fires that have been contained. The Streatham fire has been contained, the Mount Mercer fire has been contained, and the Nadimak and Grass Flat fire here at locally has also been contained. And I just want to give a big shout out to David, the local captain, Steve, the local group officer, for their leadership over the many resources that came from far and wide across the district here, and have done an amazing job, particularly in and around the nursing home and also other homes, and I'll let Jason talk about that further. Overnight, in particular, we saw movement on the Otway fires in particular, and also the Walwa fire in the state's northeast. And this just continues to remind us that even with the slightest of winds, those fires will continue to be active. Right now we have thousands of Victorian fire and emergency services and also our relief and recovery agencies that are coming to the fore. That's been bolstered by 380 interstate resources, and they've come from almost all parts of Australia now. We've got Queensland, New South Wales, ACT, South Australia that are here helping our Victorian emergency services as well. So we just want to give a big shout out to our interstate colleagues for the amazing work they're doing in supporting us at the moment. Our focus now moves in some of these fire footprints to the continued impact assessments, but also to the road openings. And so we're bringing in additional major equipment through Forest Fire Management Victoria and their relationships with forestry contractors to bring in the really big heavy machinery to start getting the roads open so that we can, as soon as it is safe, get communities back into these local towns. We know that we've now got over 1,000 agricultural properties that have potentially seen an impact. And Agriculture Victoria has set up 2 incident management teams that are working on the west and the east of the state to start progressing those assessments of each of those agricultural properties. In terms of the update on losses, I'm just going to go through each of some of the major fires now and give you the latest information that we do know. At the Ravenswood and Harcourt fire, at this stage there has been no further losses identified at this point in time, so that remains at 47 homes and 3 businesses, but we do know that there's now been livestock also identified as losses in that area. In the Otways fire, we've seen 1 home that has been lost at Kennedy's Creek, and we know there's also multiple sheds and outbuildings there as well. Here at Nadimuck and the surrounding district, we know that there's at least 30 structures. We know there's a range of power poles that have also been impacted in the area, but a range of terrific saves as we've been hearing as we've been here this morning. At the Longwood fire, that number still remains at 154 at this point in time of structures that have been destroyed, and impact teams are going through and clarifying exactly the homes, whether they're sheds or other outbuildings at this point in time. Probably the most significant update has been around Streatham, where we've seen 59 impacted structures there. 18 of those are local residential homes and a range of agricultural impacts as well. At the Walwa fire, we still only have the 4 impacted structures at this point in time, but the agricultural and the plantation impacts continue to grow in that area. At the Yarrawee fire in the state's north, we know that we've lost 10 structures at that fire, but that fire is now controlled. As I mentioned earlier, the Mount Mercer fire is now contained, and there's been 1 house and 12 sheds and outbuildings that have been identified as destroyed at that fire. At the Dargo complex, which is the Wonnangatta fire in Gippsland, we now also have, sadly, 1 confirmed loss of a property there as well. So as the Premier has mentioned, that brings the total losses across the state to just over 350 structures. And again, our thoughts go out to all of those communities where these impacts have occurred, and we are continuing as soon as we possibly can to firm up those impact assessments across the state. I'll now pass over to Jason Heffernan for a few local updates.
Thank you, and I thank the Premier and the Commissioner for their update and words. I'd like to start off by just simply saying how humbling it is and how grounding as the Fire Chief and Chief Officer for CFA to come to areas like Nadimuck and to hear from our brigade members firsthand their experiences of what it was like on the 9th of January. And not only them putting themselves in harm's way and leaving their farms, leaving their families to protect others, particularly here in Nadimuck when the fire was rapidly running through towards the town, prioritising the nursing home, prioritising as many homes as they could here. We will be focusing on, obviously, the destruction and the devastation that we're seeing across the state. But I would ask community to also think about the saves, the hard work that's been put in by fire and emergency services across the state in towns like Nadimuck, where we have seen a tremendous number of homes also saved as a result of the actions of those volunteers and emergency services. As Tim outlined, we have a number of fires now that are at contained status, which will take the pressure off the local volunteers, and emergency services will allow them to get back to their lives. But what I did see as we came in and had a look at the fire ground, It's a partnership. There is real evidence of local landholders working together with local brigades, whether it be to run tillers, to run ploughs, private units, positioning of all other pieces of equipment, because on days like that we need everything. And what was very clear to me is that joining and coming together of community and emergency services has had an impact here where so much more could have occurred as a result of those really ferocious and catastrophic conditions here in Nadimuck. Tim gave an outline and an update of some of the fires. I'd like to, say to Victorians, we are early in the high-risk weather season. This morning I took opportunity to sit down with the Bureau of Meteorology and have a look at the next couple of weeks in the outlook. And I can see that it is likely to be another heating event towards the end of January. To the extent that's yet to be determined, but I guess the indication there is, there's been a lot of fire in the landscape. Much work will be done between now and then to contain these fires. But there is time for Victorians to get ready for the rest of the season, to make the preparations. The community members I've spoken to today that have said, I saw it, I got out, I got away, and I think, thank God I did. Or the people I've spoken to that said, look, I didn't, I thought I could defend, but I'd wished I'd gotten out, is the value of making that bushfire survival plan, is the value of making those preparations. And whilst we join with community in the rebuilding and the relief and recovery of the fires that we've been, we need to turn our mind to the fires that could be as the season continues. Again, I want to thank the emergency services, but I also, as I did previously, want to thank the families and the loved ones of our emergency service personnel, and particularly our volunteers, who will be out on the fire grounds now for many weeks, and the employers of those volunteers for continuing to allow them to give their service of themselves to Victorian communities, whether it be through the CFA, to the SES, or the Red Cross. That value, that contribution is you giving to communities like Nadimuck, where you're able to release your people to come and do the valuable work. So on behalf of myself, I say thank you. I'd just like to hand back to the Minister. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Jason. It's extraordinary to be here in Nadimuck to hear firsthand, as the Premier said, people's stories of seeing smoke that wasn't there 1 minute and is there the next down the end of the street, 2 minutes later, not even being able to see your hand necessarily, or not being able to see the other side of the road. It's extraordinary what this community has gone through, Grassy Flat, as well as Quandong. These are really difficult situations when you're on a day of catastrophic rating. It's an incredibly challenging day. And how these communities have come together, the work that they have done, the months of preparation that they have put in to get them to a point where they are able to respond in such an incredible way, as we saw on Friday and the days since, has been nothing short of extraordinary. And we absolutely thank them and congratulate them for this incredible effort that they have done in preserving as much as possible across this area. I also want to thank the more than 15,000 firefighters, whether it's CFA, whether it's Forest Fire Management Victoria, whether it's FRV, who have worked so incredibly hard over these days. They have put in a tremendous effort. We have had fires across this state. We've had 10 major fires, and so many people have come out, so many people have left their own homes, so many people have traversed across the state to help. And this is how we've ended up in a situation where we are now starting to see fires be contained. I also want to thank the support crews, SES, local government, incident support workers, community health, Red Cross and more to support people. Victoria is incredibly grateful to you. So yesterday we announced a number of supports we know are needed as communities start, as the Premier said, that incredibly long journey of recovery. Recovery has a really long tail. This catastrophic rate of day on Friday has meant that there are a number of steps that we need to take to put in place as a government to support those communities who really need it. So yesterday we announced a $19.5 million package, which was jointly funded by the Commonwealth, which is, as the Premier said, $10 million for fodder. We've got the $5 million to kickstart the recovery support program, $2 million to establish the 1-800 recovery hotline, which will be available Wednesday, and $1.5 million for emergency accommodation, and $1 million for disaster-specific mental health supports. This is in addition to the personal hardship allowance, which people can apply for now. It means eligible people can apply for $340 per child, $680 per adult, with a maximum of $2,380 for a family. Please call 1800 226 226 to find out more, or visit the Relief Support Service around you. The Commonwealth has also activated the Disaster Recovery Payment for affected communities. Now, this is a one-off, non-means tested payment. It's $1,000 per eligible adult and $400 per child. And these are for those people who have been adversely affected by fires, and information on this can be found through Services Victoria. There is also, as the Premier has announced, so in partnership with the Commonwealth, we've got these payments which will be available on this Friday for $52,250, and it is there to help those people who have not been able to be insured. It's to help them re-establish their place of residence. So if you haven't got the money that you need to start to re-establish yourself, if you don't have building or contents insurance, if you cannot return home because of the damage that is there or the destruction, if you cannot get to your home for more than 7 days, you may well be eligible for this payment, and I would encourage you to find out more. We've also announced additional mental health supports, and this is a part of the journey of recovery, and it's important that every person recognises exactly how challenging these circumstances are. You've experienced one of the most frightening days of your life. It will take you time to recover. There's the physical things that need to be rebuilt, but you also need to look after yourself and do what you can to support yourself and your family. So we've got additional mental health supports for affected farming individuals and families, the Rural Financial Counselling Service, which is accessible for bushfire-affected primary producers. Now, this offers free and confidential advice. It offers mental health support as well as business and financial support. It's a one-stop shop. You can access that by calling 1300 771 741. We've also brought forward the commencement date for the Look Over the Farm Gate program, as the Premier said. So this is delivered by the National Centre for Farmer Health, and it will be operational from the 16th of January. It will provide grants of up to $5,000 for events and activities to support mental health and wellbeing, and this is really about helping communities come together and helping communities support each other. We also want to make it easier for farmers to check their livestock while ensuring that they remain safe from the dangers of fire-affected land. So if you are concerned about your livestock welfare, as has been mentioned, please call Agriculture Victoria on 1800 226 226. You'll be put through to Agriculture Victoria, and you'll be able to register your concerns and start that process of helping your property. And as the Premier said, we've also announced the 2026 Victorian bushfire appeal. And what is important about this, as the Premier said, every dollar will go towards supporting those who need it. And the security that this also brings is that people will know their donations will go directly to those communities. There is no middleman, there is nothing else. It goes straight to those people. So please, if you do want to help, this is the best way that you can support communities, is by donating to this. The Emergency Relief and Recovery Foundation will administer this bushfire appeal. So I will hand now back to the Premier if you've got any further questions.
So, take any questions?
Premier, you say you've increased funding for emergency services in your own budget paper showing fire and emergency management funding is 9% lower this financial year than the previous. Are emergency services included in CFA putting us with less?
No, that analysis is incorrect, and I appreciate the opportunity. To be absolutely clear that my government will always make sure that our emergency services have the funding they need to keep communities safe. And as demonstration of that, we have increased the funding to the CFA, and not only have we increased the annual funding to the CFA, we went further ahead of this fire season where the advice came from the CFA that additional resources were going to be required because the estimate was, and it is sadly turned out to be absolutely accurate, that it was going to be a difficult year, which is why an additional $80 million on top of the additional funding was provided to the CFA, and that went to things like earlier operation of the aerial fleet, more access to water storages and services, more equipment and training and personnel, and importantly too, increasing the campaign of an awareness for across the community. And look, and I've seen these claims. I've seen these claims that are being made, and they're just wrong. They are just wrong, and I hope my explanation today can demonstrate that not only is that these claims are wrong, they also don't do anything to support the people who are out there right now. What we all need to be doing at all times is making sure accurate, factual information is being provided, and to suggest that there's been anything other than an increase to the funding for the CFA is just incorrect.
A lot of members, though, they're getting around in very, very old trucks. We spoke to one out at Wiebusch yesterday, 32 years old. They don't have any air conditioning. They're out there fighting these fires for 24 hours a day, around the clock. A lot of them haven't slept. They're not happy.
So I'll go to that, and I'll also ask the Chief Fire Officer to go to this point as well, because every truck that goes out there for operational duty is out there because it has been as assessed and ready to be out there. I want to thank the CFA volunteers who are out there on those trucks. One of the ways we understand the central importance to having new and modern equipment and vehicles is as part of that additional funding that I referred to before. We've instigated a rolling fleet replacement program, recognising that we do need to continue to replace these vehicles. And yesterday, when I was at the staging area for the Harcourt fire, I met with one of my local brigades that I'd handed the keys over to the vehicle he was in just a couple of months ago. So we know the importance of replacing the vehicles across the state, which is why we've increased the funding, which is why we're putting more vehicles and equipment into brigades, CFA brigades right across the state, and we'll continue to do that because we're increasing the funding and recognising the incredible work that the CFA do every single day. But perhaps, Jason, that point about safety, I really want to emphasise this point on safety, because everything we do is through that prism of keeping people safe. Whether it's asking people to follow the emergency warnings, follow those warnings keeps you safe, keeps you out of harm's way, and it supports the emergency services. Don't go back into fire-affected areas because it's not safe, is all because we're wanting to keep people safe. And also, too, we want to ensure the safety of our CFA volunteers is absolutely paramount. So on that safety point, I might go to the Chief Fire Officer.
Thank you, Premier. I guess to the comments and the commentary that's been made there, I first by saying I hear you. But having said that, it is a hard and difficult job for many to do in the community. As the Premier outlined, CFA has a network of our district mechanical offices and workshops that ensures checks and balances for our fleet. And when our volunteers report errors and breakages and the rest of it, they are very quickly logged in and actioned to by our DMOs. We've got our district mechanical officers on the ground now, checking vehicles as they come on and off the fire ground through staging areas, ensuring the safety of them. I want it to be as comfortable as possible for our volunteers. As a chief officer, that's my ultimate aim. And the reality is the CFA has removed quite a number of these appliances that have been spoken about by our volunteers. In fact, we have over 167 new trucks on order or in production right now. And that's the commitment we're trying to make to our volunteers to ensure that they have the best equipment. It's the commitment the government has made in funding the additional money to CFA for our rolling fleet replacement program. And then there's a little reality in terms of the availability of getting some of these trucks and producing them and that sort of thing. But certainly we hear the plights of our volunteers, and we're wanting to make sure that regardless of what truck they have, that it is safe, that it is fit for purpose and able to be used in a manner that protects them and protects their community.
Sam, hearing about, speaking budget in 2024 to 2025, the budget was 441 million.
Yeah, this is one for me. No.
Just
Well,
understand. And then in 2025 to 2026, that was 400 million. Are you happy with the budget and where that stands? And then,
Look, focus on right now is community. Focus is on fire response. It's pretty clear this issue is not going to go away. So I can confirm that the CFA's budget has increased year on year, and I can also confirm that the available budget to CFA this year is some $20 million more than what it was last year. And that's in addition to, back in spring, we went to the government and said, we're in for a big one. And that we think that we needed more supplementary funding to ensure the safety and security of Victorian residents and to give more to our volunteers to allow them to operate better on the fire ground. And that is why we got money for strategic bulk water. It's why we got money for the Get Fire Ready campaign, which hundreds of thousands of Victorians either saw the campaign or engaged or participated with the campaign. And as Chief, I'm convinced that had a contributing factor to some of the many successes we had on Friday. Of course, our job is to work with government to assess the risks to this state, provide advice to government, to seek the funding that we need as an organisation. The CFA has done that previously. The CFA will always continue to do that as an organisation to the safety and security of this state.
And just to finish off on this point, I'd really hope that we can, as you've heard it from the CFA itself, that there has been an increase in funding. And I know there's some information out there that has perhaps not been as accurate as it needs to be. So I'd hope that a way of showing support to our CFA volunteers is making sure that the accurate information is reported, because right now, as Jason said, all of our focus is on supporting our emergency services who are out there saving lives, protecting community, and also putting themselves in an extreme emergency. So let's make sure that we're not causing additional stress and concern with information that's just not correct.
But the reality of the situation is that those resourcing issues, particularly with vehicles, is also adding significant times onto how quickly responders can get to fires in our patch. Do you think you're acting with enough urgency to fix that resourcing issue?
I think it's important. I'd welcome where you've got an example of that, because I think there is, if I can finish, if I could just finish on this point, because in an emergency, we're just having this conversation here, in an emergency, and I heard this at Harcourt as well, there is a lot of pressure in terms of what goes on the ground. And so let's remember that, as the Chief Fire Officer has just said, there has been the resources that have been provided to the organisation. We make sure that the equipment and resources are fit for purpose, are safe to be used in operationals. But when we are out on the ground, when they are out on the ground and in operational situations, it is a very difficult and dangerous situation. And so I think it is important that we continue to provide support to the CFA. I agree with that starting point. And that is why my government will always fund our emergency services to provide them with the resources they need to keep our communities safe. And as evidence of that, we've increased the CFA's budget. We're providing, and then when we were asked to, provided $80 million more in funding in response to the immediate need that had been identified ahead of this fire season.
Many firefighters in this patch and across the state said they wouldn't be fighting fires on public land this year in response to the emergency services levy. Now that we're in a statewide bushfire disaster, what's your response to that and how do you feel about that?
Well, I thank all those volunteers who have come out in an emergency to protect their communities and to protect lives. I thank those volunteers, and I might again refer back to the Chief Fire Officer, because I don't believe we have had any instances. No, I can confirm that. We've had no instances of where brigades haven't turned out, and I thank them. I thank them for that work that they have done, because that is the spirit of the CFA, and the spirit of volunteerism is getting out there and protecting communities, protecting and saving lives, as we've seen here in Natimuc, and that is absolutely the ethos of so many of the CFA volunteers that I speak to, not just on days like today, but in my own community. They're there to serve the community, and I thank them for what they've done.
I've just got another question about the Longwood fire. I don't know if this might be best place.
Sure.
Do we know more what started that fire? There was some suggestion that it might have been a car accident.
I think that's one for the Chief Fire Officer.
Thank you. Look, all the fires that are obviously subject to the major emergencies at the moment are under investigation. The Longwood fire is one of them. Obviously, due to the scale and the size and sheer nature and the number of fires we have around the state, it's going to take us a little bit of time to send investigators around to all of them. We're also doing that in conjunction with Victoria Police as a matter of course. So at the moment, I don't have the exact course, but it is well and truly under investigation.
Well, we've got you, Tim, just very briefly. We saw you talking to people, particularly in regards to the... Oh, sorry, do you want to answer the rest of that one?
No, that was Jason. We just answered Jason.
You want Jason with you?
Do you want Jason?
Sorry,
to-
Jason. Sorry,
Jason.
Jason.
It's all right.
Jason, we saw you talking with people before about that they're obviously very emotional, particularly about what's happening with the nursing home. People going in essentially blind. We understand to save that property and that building, the people inside. Can you just talk a little bit to your understanding of what's happened there?
Look, I spent a lot of time on the phone with the captain of the Native Fire Brigade as well as other members here today, hearing their experiences. If I just, go back to, we called it Catastrophic Fire Day for a reason, and one of those reasons is because the winds and the wind strength and speed is phenomenal. And in this part of the state, we saw upwards of to 90 kilometres an hour, and grass fires move at an exceptional amount of speed. So by the time that they got halfway to where the fire was going to be, the command vehicle, that they were heading back to Nadimuck, and knowing this is the value of having firefighters and community-centred fire emergency services like the CFA in communities like this, because they know their local community. They know where the most vulnerable are in the place. They know where to send the resources that can do the best for the town. And I've got to say, the crew here knew what was best for Nadimuck, and they knew that nursing home was a priority. They knew it was a priority for not only the people in it, but they knew it was a priority for the town, and they did everything they could. And I'm just proud. And this is not just happened to Nadimuck. This has happened in communities right across Victoria, and it just goes to show the value of a connected network of community-based fire and emergency services.
Just got time for one or two more questions, guys.
Sorry, just back to Longwood. Do we know more about the circumstances surrounding the death of that gentleman?
No, that's a Victorian.
So as you might have seen, Victoria Police announced last night the tragic death of that male in Gobor in the Longwood fire. What I can tell you is that a car was found that had run off the road, and that gentleman was found around 100 metres from that car, and it was in the fire landscape.
Just finally, one thing on another issue for the day.
Yeah, thank you.
Premier.
Yeah.
Just very briefly, situation that's been reported from Saturday night, an incident down on the south that seems to be racially motivated. An attack on an imam and his wife, just obviously terrible thing to happen, but the police say they have made some arrests. What's your understanding of what's happened and your reaction to that?
I absolutely condemn that attack that was motivated by Islamophobia, and I've spoken to the victims. I spoke to the imam and his wife this morning and told them that I condemned this attack. It was a terrible, hateful attack, and there is no place for Islamophobia, no place for this sort of hate anywhere in Victoria. Now, Victoria Police are investigating and will let that run its course. But I want to say very clearly to the Muslim community, but particularly to Muslim women, that I will fight and support your right every single day to live freely in this state, free from hate, and also fight for your right to move around our community safely and with dignity. There's going to be many in our community today who are fearful as a result of this attack, and I will always fight for the right of every community to be safe and free from hate.
What is your plan more specifically to address that faith-based hatred though in Victoria?
So there are many actions that we have already taken, and actions that we are building on. Last year, the Victorian Parliament passed the anti-hate laws that make this sort of hateful behaviour, this alleged hateful behaviour, a crime. Makes it a crime, and it gives police additional powers to prosecute hateful behaviour. It also sends a very clear message that here in Victoria, no matter who you are, no matter how you identify, no matter what faith or culture you follow, you have the right to live freely and safely in our state, and the laws are there to protect you. But further to that, just before, following that, also that hateful attack, that terrorist attack in Bondi, We made further announcements how we are looking at what more can be done to strengthen these laws, particularly with holding social media and anonymous social media account users to account. And we've asked for some advice on how we can draft laws here in Victoria, because there is so much of this hate that circulates in forums online and in social media platforms that needs to be dealt with. We've also, too, given police additional powers to crack down on hateful behaviour around protests. I've been convening for the best part of a year now an anti-hate task force where I meet with faith and cultural leaders on a regular basis, and we had a joint meeting just before Christmas in the Cabinet Room where we had representatives from across Victoria's strong and proud multicultural and multi-faith communities who we signed a pledge saying very clearly that not only is there no place for hate, we also understand the need to work even harder to deliver that message, to crack down on hate, and also come together and recognise all that is good and strong about our state. And what is good and strong about our state is the fact that we are a multicultural, multi-faith community where people from around the world choose to live here. And that is not just worth protecting, we've got to strengthen it. And we are seeing here, I've seen already out on the fire grounds, the Sikh volunteers who are helping feeding communities who have been affected by the fires. And that's an example of how the strengths of this state shines through. When times are tough, when groups are under attack from this sort of hateful behaviour, or communities are under threat from emergencies, our communities come together and call out this behaviour and come together to support one another, and we'll continue that work.
I've just got an update that we've got from Peter, our incident controller. There's 16 properties that have been houses lost in Natimak, not 30. 16 buildings.
16 homes.
Sorry. Just to clarify, here at Natimak we now understand, with rapid impact assessment having occurred on the ground, originally it was done from the air, 16 homes have been lost, but there are a total of 30-odd structures that have been damaged. So that's a good development for here at Natimak. Thank you.
Sorry, it was too small. Turn that off.